Out of all the topics that frequently come up in land transactions, soil and septic are probably the most misunderstood. So, this video is going to talk about what people mean when they talk about a perk test, why it's important for landowners to understand, and why you should care. Let's get started. The first thing about septic and soil that you should know is that about 25% of all US households rely on a septic system to manage wastewater from the home. And when you're in the big city, septic doesn't really come into play because you have sewer system, a municipal sewer system that manages that. However, when you get outside of the city or even outside of a small town and you're in the country, your ability to build on that property depends on septic. So the importance of soil and the perk test and how that all works, we're going to get into that. But first, we have to discuss how a septic system works in the first place. So what happens with a septic system is that wastewater from your home will first leave the home through a septic line and it's going to flow into a septic tank. A septic tank is basically a container made out of concrete, fiberglass, sometimes plastic. And the wastewater pools in the septic tank where the tank actually enables initial treatment of wastewater through anaerobic digestion. It's basically a fancy way of saying that microorganisms break down some of the material and remove some of the contaminants from the wastewater. But with the septic tank, even though it's underground usually, the surrounding soil quality hasn't really come into play yet because that's what happens next. Once the wastewater is pre-treated in the septic tank, what happens is that the treated wastewater actually flows out of the septic tank into what's called a drain field. A drain field is essentially a series of underground trenches that distribute the wastewater via perforated pipes or other permeable or semi-permeable material. The classic conventional septic system uses gravel trenches. So the gravel helps to distribute the wastewater into the area and the surrounding soil. Basically, the trenches in the drain field allow the surrounding soil to sponge up the wastewater into the surrounding area. And once the wastewater passes through the drain field, the soil underground works its charms. So no one talks about this, and I learned this just recently, but soil is basically magic. Now, okay, I know it sounds crazy, but stay with me for a second. There's this guy, he's a science fiction writer named Arthur C. Clarke. He wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey. He has this quote about technology that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, the fact is that no human technology that we've developed is advanced enough to do what soil does naturally in a septic system. Soil purifies water, and it does it free of any cost. It just does it naturally there in your yard. You know, there's no monthly bill that is applied for that. Soil's free when you own that land, but soil has to work a certain way in order for septic to be installed. So the function of soil is critical because the function of soil is what enables the wastewater to be disposed of naturally without the need for municipal sewer and without the risk of contaminating the home or the natural environment around the home. The slang term for perk test is it used to refer to a percolation test. It's kind of like an antiquated term. The percolation referring to how water drains through the soil. But what that refers to today is county site inspection performed normally by a site inspector from the county environmental health office. Common reasons that septic applications and perk tests are denied include soil that is too wet or has too high of a water table. Perhaps some reasons are for soil that has too much clay content, and certain types of soil like clay just don't drain well. They don't drain well at all. A lot of times you'll see shallow depth to rock, that below the surface of the ground you just don't have enough soil until you start hitting rock. And then sometimes it's the slope, the terrain or topography of the land itself. Even if the soil's good, having a really steep slope makes it difficult to install a septic system. A lot of times it's just a combination of all those variables and they play in together, and they can change on a dime. 10 feet in any direction, soil characteristics can change. Just because the house next door has a septic system and the house on the other side has one too, doesn't mean that your vacant lot in the middle is necessarily going to qualify. So at the end of the day, if you're a landowner and your property requires septic to be used as a home site, it doesn't matter what the realtor says. It doesn't matter what the appraiser says. If you don't know what's going on with the soil under the ground of your property, you'll never fully know what the property's really worth. And the good news, though, is that you can find out, and it's pretty simple in terms of how. What I'd recommend is that you consider hiring a soil scientist to perform a preliminary soil evaluation of your property. They'll go out and they'll take a sample of soil across the entire property, and they'll tell you with a general mapping, literally a mapped report of your property, and they'll show you, where the soil is good for septic and where it's not. The downside of the working with soil scientists is that they're more expensive than working with the county. But the positive benefit is that they'll take more of a distributed sample of your entire property. So they can sometimes go through as an extra service, and they'll actually get you a permit as well when you're ready to do construction. But to know what the soil will give you, you don't really need a permit. A soil evaluation with a good soil map is really all that you need. So a lot of times sellers will be told from real estate agents, "Oh yeah, don't worry about it. The buyer is going to pay for this anyway." And that's true. However, if you have it done in advance, what's going to happen when you go to sell is that you just have way more leverage with your buyer. You just have way more pricing power and confidence in the market of the product that you're actually offering and what it's really going to be worth. So I'd recommend considering that investment. If you're a landowner, you want to find out what your property is really worth, but you need to install septic for residential construction, soil evaluation is going to be a good bet. So I hope this video demystifies the perk test, what it is, and how septic and soil are really important to landowners.